What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We've got a lot of interesting nuggets to drop on you in this week's episode. We've got two phenomenal guests. We've got Rich Ohrnberger, former Patriot, current radio host out in San Diego. Wanted to have him on because he might be the best storyteller of the Bill Belichick era. He was inside the walls, not only under Bill Belichick, but under Bill O'Brien as well. So with the big hire, I've reported it. Many others have as well. At this recording, it's about 2 o'clock on Wednesday. Patriots still haven't announced that they've hired Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator, but you can bank on that happening. And Rich is great in terms of talking to us about how Bill O'Brien teaches, his style, his approach, why the Patriots offense should improve under Bill O'Brien. So great chat with Rich Ohrnberger. And then we're bringing in Eric Galko, who is running the football side of things at the Shrine Bowl, which starts later this week. And the Patriots obviously are one of the teams that have been brought in to coach one of the Shrine Bowl teams. They're coaching the West team out in Las Vegas for the Shrine Bowl this week. So great information from Eric. But first, let's get right into our conversation with Rich Ohrnberger, because we know you want to hear more about Bill O'Brien and what might be next for this Patriots offense. So without further ado, here's Rich. There he is. There's our guy, Rich Ohrnberger. Rich, thanks so much for being with us here on Next Pats, man. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here with you, Phil. Always glad to jump in and talk some Patriots with you, bud.
Well, with all the news that we've had this week, I wanted to get you on because not only are you a great person to talk about Bill O'Brien with, because your time in New England overlapped with Billy O's, but you're also, Rich, I would venture to say, you, because of your reputation while you were with the team, I think you might be right there with Matt Light as maybe like the best storytellers in the Bill Belichick Patriots era. Now, I'm ready to leapfrog you ahead of Matt Light. The only reason I even include his name is because when he watches this, I might get a phone call and say, "What the hell? What? You're going to give Ohrnberger that title over me, Perry? What are we doing here?" But that's why I want to have you on. We got some Billy O news happening. We've got somebody who knows what that experience is like playing for Billy O. And so I wanted to have you on and hear from you about what it was like. So what did you make of this move when you heard that the Patriots were bringing him back?
Well, first of all, thank you for the credentialing. And don't let Matt intimidate you. He's a big softy. No, Matty's a great guy. And I remember, look, when I first got to New England, speaking of Billy O'Brien, but Matt Light was a really important part of that offense. You didn't have to worry about the best pass rusher getting to Tom during those times because he was just so excellent at shutting down pass rushers and obviously creating a lot of time for a lot of the success that the team had offensively. And he's got a lot of stories to tell. I can tell you that much. But yeah, specifically focusing on the new hire, which is a lot like the old hire, right? I mean, this is a very similar offensive system that you've seen for years with Josh McDaniels, because not a tremendous amount changed. Certainly things evolved from Billy O'Brien's time with the Patriots into the Josh McDaniel era, but not a ton of changes. Because let's face it, it doesn't matter if you're in New England or you're in Arizona or Miami or LA, the number of plays that you can run and have success running in the NFL, they're all the same. Everybody's got them. I mean, you can have differences in personnel. Some teams have better running backs. Some teams have more mobile quarterbacks. And so that'll change the variety of plays that you're willing to call or comfortable calling. But outside of that, I mean, everybody's running the same stuff. The most important thing is play sequencing, which means what play are you running as a result of a play that you've shown a week ago, a couple of weeks ago, earlier in the game? What formations are those plays coming from? What motion are you running in conjunction with that play to confuse the defense? Because you can confuse the defense and run a whole lot of pretty vanilla offensive plays as long as you dress them up, so to speak, with varieties of formations and personnel groups and motion packages to confuse defenders. And Billy O'Brien is one of the best in the game at doing that.
When it came to his teaching style, and I know you were working closely with Dante Scarnecchia, who's the offensive line coach at the time when you were in New England, but when Bill O'Brien was at the front of the room, what did you come to expect from those sorts of addresses? You know, the thing that we've heard from people that have worked with him in the past is can be a pretty fiery guy. He had the old teapot nickname that the quarterbacks, I think it was Hoyer and Brady mostly, they actually had a little teapot in the quarterback meeting room, I think, and he had to throw some money in anytime he, dropped an F-bomb. We'll have to resurrect that story. But what was it like learning from and playing for Bill O'Brien on the offensive side of the ball here?
It was really great. And he is passionate. That's the way I would describe it, because everybody can lose their temper, especially when they care about something as greatly as Billy O'Brien clearly does about playing and executing great offensive football. And he's an educator, to the granular level when he needs to be. He can focus on pass protection or run blocking scheme. He can also focus on, how soon or how quick you need to come out of a break if you're a receiver. Also, the timing of the throws or the path that the quarterback takes to the junction point in the backfield with the running back, or the width of the running back on a running play, so he's hitting his landmarks so that you have success in following blocks on a run play. I mean, he has all those things dialed in so tightly that it doesn't matter what position group you play in New England. While Billy O'Brien was there, he could speak to you as if he could coach that position group. And what a compliment to give to an offensive coordinator, because that's the job, that's the role of a coordinator, is to have sort of your finger in all of those pies, to understand the game, the complexity of what you're trying to accomplish offensively at that level where you can communicate seamlessly with all the position groups. And so, yeah, my descriptions of him would be similar to a lot of guys: fiery, passionate, but he's also a tremendous educator. And that is paramount if you're going to be successful coaching in this league.
I think people that hear you describe the way he taught, that are Patriots fans that listen to this podcast, are all of a sudden standing up wherever they are. Hopefully not in the car. They're standing up and they're applauding, because that was, the word we heard thrown around here this past season, Rich, was details, right? And there just was a lack of detail, and there just wasn't an understanding of the detail that needed to be out there on a play-to-play basis to execute the plays that were being called. And so when you can get granular, to use your word, the way Bill O'Brien clearly has the ability to, that should make everything a little bit better. When it came to, mixing it up with him, you were known to be sort of a funny guy, Rich. I mean, that was the reputation here, that you would even occasionally get up in front of the room, maybe to loosen the guys up every once in a while. Was he that kind of guy? Could he be that kind of guy? I think one thing that's sort of interesting about his background is that he obviously has this great NFL career and resume, not only with the Patriots, but as a head coach. And, maybe people in Houston wouldn't call it a great, quote unquote, resume, but he had some success there in Houston with some teams that were lacking a little bit in terms of offensive talent. I think the ability to relate to younger players is something you have to have now if you're in a leadership position in the NFL. And I think he has that. Did you sense that from him? This was a long time ago now, right? We're talking 10 plus years ago, but did he have that when you were playing for him?
Oh yeah, he certainly did. Billy O, one of the great things actually, and I could say the same thing about Coach Belichick also. They both had the ability to understand where you needed some sort of relief from the tension and the stress of a meeting. So he had pretty good comedic timing. Like, he would walk in and understood sometimes how absurd he may sound shouting at a room full of grown men. And so to break up sort of the tension that creates sometimes, he would make a joke. Like you said, I was a foil for that. I'm very happy to be that for all these coaches and throughout my life. I mean, if you want to have a good time, you don't got to look far. Just I'll be right there next to you. And so he would say something, and be all pissed off about a practice or a play that happened in the game or whatever. And then he'll be like, and I got, I don't know if we can curse on this podcast.
Go for it.
But he'd be like, I got Ohrnberger over here, and he's smiling, like, okay, like, look, here's what we need to do, and like but that's what smart communicators do. They understand. I mean, it's like anything else. You read a book, and it's a novel, or shoot, Shakespeare did this, and at some point you got to break the tension with the drunk guy wandering out of the alley, you know what I mean, and saying something goofy or funny. Otherwise, everybody is going to be at too high of a pitch. As the lights go out in my studio, they're on an automatic timer. At too high of a pitch, you're going to burn people out. And I think he did a really good job of avoiding burnout by understanding like the needs of his players. And listen, you learn a lot by moving on from different places. Now he's coached at several different places. He was a head coach at the college level at Penn State. He was a head coach with the Houston Texans, and he became the de facto general manager with the Houston Texans. And then he took on this offensive coordinator role with the Crimson Tide. And now he's back in what I would assume would be a similar position with the Patriots organization, even though they don't name their coaching staff as such. I would imagine that's going to be what he's going to do. He's going to be calling the plays when he gets back there. And just that voyage that he's taken since leaving the last time, he's gathered more experience. He's gathered more tools to put in his toolbox to be able to connect with the players. And specifically, I think Mac Jones could use some consistency as a young quarterback. He'll be on to his second or third coordinator with Billy O'Brien here. And it's important to be able to build trust and to believe in the system. And I think bringing in a Billy O'Brien may help stabilize things with their young quarterback.
That's what Patriots fans are hoping for sure. And, you got a chance to, but you were still playing. This was during your pro career. But when Bill O'Brien went to Penn State, even if it was from afar, I'm sure you followed how he helped that program. What did you learn, even if it was, again, from afar? What did you learn about Bill O'Brien during his Penn State tenure, as I'm sure you followed it closely, Rich?
What I learned from him is that's somebody who doesn't back down from a challenge, and he was faced with a significant challenge at Penn State. The Nittany Lions had just been swept up in inarguably the worst and most damning scandal in the history of collegiate athletics. Just namely with Joe Paterno being the overseer of that program, he was almost a religious figure. He was such an icon, and for him to be handed culpability in what happened on that campus and to children, you couldn't walk into an environment more fraught with booby traps and disaster if you're the next head coach. And I think he handled that with poise, and I think he handled that with a level of care and composure that is uncommon amongst even the most talented coaches, because there was so much more than just coaching a football team that he had to deal with. And I'm sure he learned a lot more about being a coach through that process than maybe he had gained through all the years he coached at the NFL level previous to that, because he had to be now the face of a program that was rebuilding after tragedy. And that is an insane job to want to sign up for, but he did. And as a result, catapulted his own career and really saved a college football program from scraping bottom. I think before it had an opportunity to really scrape bottom, Billy O'Brien was the safety valve, and he helped keep the wheels on. And as a former Penn Stater, a Nittany Lion, I really appreciated seeing that and kept in contact with him through that. And what a job he did.
It really is. I think there's a section of the football fan base at large that sort of forgets about that part of his career because he was Texans head coach for a while, and he's again at a high profile program at Alabama, and he's getting dumped on by people at Alabama because they only averaged 40 points a game this past season, and the quarterback only won one Heisman Trophy as opposed to two. And you forget about just the incredible amount of adversity that he faced and was, as you mentioned, willing to take head on. And I think that says a lot about him in terms of his character and an ability and a willingness to take on challenges. And of course that will matter. He's in a lesser, quote unquote, lesser role now with the Patriots. He's not running the football operation, but there's going to be plenty of adversity facing the Patriots offense at some point this year. And I think Patriots fans are probably comforted to a degree knowing that this is a guy who has handled a lot in his professional career. Rich, I wanted to ask you, because you're in San Diego, you're still, I know they've left, right? But you are still following the Chargers. And I'm curious, do you think the Chargers had any interest in bringing him on, whether it's as offensive coordinator or head coach? I know they've committed to Brandon Staley for at least another year here. We'll see how it goes in 2023, but they fired Joe Lombardi. And there's a number of offensive coordinator openings around the league. You would have thought Bill O'Brien would sort of be in the mix for a lot of these jobs, and we really never heard it. Do you think that was because the Chargers maybe weren't interested, or because Bill O'Brien, on the other hand, just wanted to come back home? He's from the area here, obviously.
I was a little surprised that there wasn't more traction with his name in NFL circles as a potential offensive coordinator. But coaching in general, and you know this, Phil, from years and years working, covering the NFL, it is who you know business. And the NFL is getting younger and younger at the head coaching position. And so how many allies are in positions of hiring at this point that Billy O'Brien has either crossed path with or has worked for or with during the course of his coaching career? That the reality is that number is becoming fewer and fewer as the years roll by. Now, that's not to say that, he's some old man and he's going to bring in some stodgy form of football, because like you said, even if Alabama fans' expectations are far too high for their football team this year and 40 points per game isn't enough, what he was able to do at the college football level with that Alabama offense was impressive. And they put up gaudy numbers, and they'll have a potential first round draft pick, or almost a lock at first round draft pick, coming out at quarterback this year. And that's also probably lends more confusion to why his name wasn't brought up more often, because some of these teams who are picking awfully high need a new offensive coordinator, and maybe it would make sense to bring in the guy who worked with potentially your draft pick coming in at quarterback. But look, maybe it's their loss and the Patriots gain, or maybe there's some truth to the fact that the Patriots could have potentially been in touch with him at the start of this hiring cycle, knowing full well that they wanted first dibs. And there was just rumor around the NFL. Again, this is just speculation, that he wasn't going to be available, that his next gig was going to be with New England again and working with Bill Belichick again. So there's a lot of complexities. Obviously, we're just throwing things at the wall. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised, because I do think he's a talented play caller, and there's a lot of teams who could use one of those right now.
Rich, last thing I wanted to ask you before we get you out of here, your experience playing offensive line and playing in multiple systems. I did want to ask you, because I was talking to somebody in the building recently who made mention of the fact that, Patriots have had 4.5 offensive line coaches over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. It's been a steady cycle from Dante Scarnecchia, Cole Popovich, Carmen Bracillo. Last year it was Matt Patricia for like a week into the regular season. They realized he's actually pretty busy calling plays and being an offensive coordinator. Really hard to coach the offensive line, period, even when you're not doing that other stuff. So Billy Yates ends up being essentially the offensive line coach. They might be on to another one, but we're not sure yet, but they might be on to another one in 2023. How hard is that for an offensive line? We talk about, quarterbacks dealing with multiple coordinators or play callers all the time, and how that can maybe stunt their growth. How difficult is it as a lineman to maybe not even change systems that often, but have the voice change that often at the front of the room? Could that be a really difficult thing for that unit?
Oh yeah, certainly. Absolutely. And it's such a communication is such a key with offensive linemen, having different voices in front of the room every single year for the last half dozen or, you know, 5 years or so. It's difficult. And look, I have the utmost respect for Matt Patricia. I played for him. I think he's a brilliant coach. Bill Yates, I played with him. I think a lot of his intelligence and his ability to communicate, because he was a veteran when I was coming in, and he definitely helped my development as a young offensive lineman. And I could see the reason why he found coaching as a path in his second career, because he was excellent in that role, but the reality is Bill wants to create an environment of competition at every single level of the football culture, and that includes the coaching staff. And so it doesn't matter if we're talking about receivers, or we're talking about long snappers, or we're talking about edge rushers or quarterbacks or offensive line coaches. If he thinks he could get even a fraction better by making a personnel choice, and even a difficult personnel choice, he'll make that decision, and he's proven it over and over and over again. So it doesn't shock me, but the lack of consistency, it can hurt your team. So it is important to try to make the right hires as quickly as you possibly can, and nobody knows that better than Bill, and nobody is efforting to get that done more so than Bill Belichick. I can promise you that. So if he can find the right mix, the right personnel to fill those voids or those jobs on his staff as quickly as possible, he will. But yeah, clearly he hasn't felt 100% secure in those decisions yet, and is looking to again make a move to potentially improve that position, which he's done that so many times before.
That culture of competition is so fascinating to hear about, because we think about it with the players all the time, but it extends, I'm sure, as you mentioned, throughout the building, and it sort of just shapes how everybody goes about their job. You talk about that level of stress and the need for levity every once in a while. You can understand why it would be somewhat of a stressful situation, a stressful operation to work in. Rich, thank you so much for being with us here, man. This is amazing. We could talk to you all day long about the Patriots, everything related to the Patriots. For our West Coast Next Pats listeners, go find Rich and listen to him. He's on San Diego Sports 760. He's on Fox Sports Radio, so everybody can listen to him there. He's on NBC San Diego as well. Rich Ohrnberger, you're the best. Thanks so much, buddy.
Yeah, you bet, man. Just as the phone starts ringing on this side.
That was perfect. No, we got it in.
You're the best, Phil. Thanks for having me on, and we'll do it again soon, man.
Really could talk to Rich Ohrnberger all day long about his experiences in Foxborough. Just has such a great perspective. He's covering the league at large as a member of the Fox Sports Radio crew. So he's just such a great perspective on all things that are going on in the league right now. So fantastic to have him on. Next Pats, we'll have to have him back. Now, before we get into our chat with Eric Galko, I did want to mention to you some news that we have on the Shrine Bowl front. So this, of course, is one of the top pre-draft collegiate all-star games that happens every year. The Shrine Bowl now out in Vegas. In the past, it has been in Tampa Bay, but they're doing it big this year at the Shrine Bowl. And the Patriots, again, they are one of the teams, or one of the coaching staffs that will be coaching one of the teams at the Shrine Bowl. And it's basically a week-long endeavor. The game itself is on February 2nd. Patriots going out there late this week, and the Shrine Bowl today announced the coaching staffs, because even though we knew that the Patriots would be coaching in the game, we didn't know exactly what the individual coaches would be doing. So today, again, it was announced Bill Belichick, as well as Gerard Mayo, as well as Bill O'Brien, are all going to be in supervisor types of roles during the week of practices. So they'll be there, they'll be involved, but they won't be the quote-unquote head coach. They won't be the quote-unquote defensive coordinator or the quote-unquote offensive coordinator. They'll be involved, but part of the appeal of coaching in the Shrine Bowl for these teams is allowing some of the other assistants to maybe bump up to a different role that they wouldn't have typically during the season, or even if it's somewhat of a lateral move and just having a coach who coaches one position during the season coach an entirely different position. That's something that the Shrine Bowl can offer these coaches as well. So as part of that, Troy Brown, Patriots receivers coach, is going to be the head coach of the West team. It was announced today. Ross Douglas, who helped Troy Brown with the receivers in 2022, he's going to be the offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach. So it's an interesting development for Ross Douglas, who's one of the youngest coaches on the staff. He left Rutgers after spending time at Michigan and playing at Michigan, graduated from Michigan, got a master's degree at Rutgers. He's been with the Patriots the last couple of seasons, first as a defensive assistant, last year as a assistant receivers coach. Now we'll see what his role is going into 2023, but very well respected. And again, very young up and coming coach on Bill Belichick's staff. On the defensive side of things, Mike Pellegrino and Brian Belichick, they're going to be the co-defensive coordinators. Pellegrino is going to also coach the defensive line. He's usually the corners coach. Brian Belichick is usually the safeties coach for the Patriots, but he's going to be coaching the linebackers. And just a couple of other notes on the staff in general. Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, not listed. So we will see if they're involved with the Patriots moving forward. There is some question as to whether or not they will be with the team in 2023. I reported earlier in the week that there's a feeling inside the building among some of Patricia's colleagues that he will not be back with the team in 2023. I think a lot of us assumed that he would be, that Bill Belichick would find a place for Patricia on his staff. And Bill Belichick could certainly do that if he wanted to, and if Patricia was interested. But if you're Patricia and you want to become a head coach again someday, does it benefit you to go back into an Ernie Adams type of role and get farther away from the sidelines and from the coaching job that you hope to have again someday? If you're not going to be coaching on the offensive side of things, obviously Bill O'Brien was just hired to be offensive coordinator. Offensive line coach, who knows how the Patriots decide to fill that out. Billy Yates is going to the Shrine Bowl as a quote-unquote assistant offensive line coach, but he's the only coach listed as somebody who will have anything to do with the offensive line. So I assume he'll be leading the charge for that group, as he did really for the majority of this past season. As I mentioned in our conversation with Rich, that was his gig. He was the offensive line coach. Once week one came and went and it was clear to players that Matt Patricia had too much on his plate, things eventually evolved and Billy Yates essentially became the team's O-line coach. So just will be interesting to continue to track what happens with Patricia and Joe Judge as well. You know, if you're Joe Judge, are you interested in getting back into the special teams field after that's really where you cut your teeth? Yes. And that's what launched you into being a head coach for the New York Giants. Sure. But is it a step back for you after working with quarterbacks this year and hoping to really establish yourself on the offensive side? Because everybody knows if you're an offensive coach and you're on that track, you've got a better chance of becoming a head coach down the line, because that's what owners want these days. Is Joe Judge going to be interested in going back to special teams? You know, it's my understanding that Cam McCord will be with the team in 2023. He is the supervisor for the special teams units for the West team at the Shrine Bowl. Cam McCord is. Joe Houston, who has assisted Cam McCord the last few years, he will be the special teams coach at the Shrine Bowl. A couple of other little nuggets. What I found interesting, Evan Rothstein is making the trip out to Vegas as the running backs coach. There was some question in the building as to what might happen with Rothstein if Patricia was not part of the staff moving forward, because Rothstein worked with Patricia in Detroit. They worked together very closely this year, it's my understanding, in terms of creating game plans, offensive game plans for the Patriots. So if Patricia wasn't going to be here any longer, would that mean that Rothstein was in Foxborough or not? And it appears as though, at least right now, he will be, because he's going to be the running backs coach for the West team. Vinny Cincinnati, who coached running backs this past year, he's going to coach receivers. So a little bit of a shakeup there. Tyler Hughes, he's been an offensive assistant for the last 3 years for the Patriots. He's going to coach tight ends. Nick Caley, we've been over it before on this podcast. His contract was up after the 2022 season. He interviewed for the offensive coordinator gig here in New England. Of course, that will be Bill O'Brien's job. So we'll see what happens moving forward with Nick Caley. Just because his contract is up doesn't necessarily preclude him from returning, but it'll be Tyler Hughes, again, who's been with the team for several years now, coaching the tight ends at the Shrine Bowl. For more info on what's going on with this coaching staff, head on over to NBCSportsBoston.com or check out my Twitter profile at Phil A. Perry. I had a report that had plenty of detail on Matt Patricia and what might lie ahead for him in 2023 and beyond. That should be on the website. You can also find a conversation that I had with Dante Scarnecchia recently about Adrian Clem. Adrian Clem played for Dante Scarnecchia. The two ran into each other on the scouting trail in the last few years. Dante Scarnecchia had some pretty noteworthy praise, I would say, for Clem and how he handled his players during that scouting visit that Dante Scarnecchia made to UCLA when Clem was part of the Bruins staff there. Had some nice things to say about Adrian Clem. Adrian Clem, it's been reported by Albert Breer, had a second meeting scheduled with the Patriots. So he doesn't get the offense coordinator job, but might he be brought in for something else? It'll be interesting to see if the Patriots decide to keep him around. Okay, now you guys are here to hear from Eric Galko because we're going to talk about not only the Patriots' involvement in the Shrine Bowl and just how much they will get out of these Shrine Bowl practices leading up to the game on February 2nd. I can tell you Patriots coaches are excited to get their hands on these players because it's so much different. The interactions that they'll have with these players are so much different that they'll be able to learn a lot more about these guys than they will about a vast number of other prospects in this year's draft class. But we'll learn about that. We'll learn about some players themselves, some potential Patriots to keep an eye on from Eric Galko, who's actually living in the area. So he follows the Patriots closely. He knows what they might be interested in. He's got some names for you. Let's get to our chat with Eric Galko right now. There he is. There's Eric Galko, Director of Football Operations and Player Personnel for the Shrine Bowl. Eric, thanks so much for being with us here on Next Pass.
I appreciate it. What's going on?
Well, we are trying to get our arms around what it means for the Patriots to be coaching in the Shrine Bowl, to be coaching in any of these all-star games this time of year, because this time of year, Eric, we're usually covering playoff games. So this is a little bit different for us, a little bit different for the Patriots, but I wanted to have you on and just find out about what goes into that process, what made the Patriots a good fit for the Shrine Bowl this year. Tell us, if you can, as much as you can, about how that marriage came to be.
You know, it's very funny when these, when the two staffs are coaching an all-star game, you're down after the season because you didn't make the playoffs, and the Patriots are one of our two teams, the Falcons as well too, who jumped at the opportunity. They kind of switched from like, we're gonna make the playoffs down year. We'd love to coach the Shrine Bowl and get a jump start in the draft process, get our hands on these players too. So, our coaching staffs are made up from teams that are non-playoff teams who had at least some stability in their coaching staff. Obviously, the Patriots and Falcons both had some turnover in their position coaches, etc. But both teams had some stability. They wanted a chance to kind of come down to Las Vegas. Poor Patriots personnel have to go to Vegas for a whole week, but come to the Las Vegas, be at the Shrine Bowl, and coach a lot of first, second, third, fourth round picks all week long at Allegiant Stadium on game day.
And when it comes to jumping at that opportunity, I mean, is that Bill Belichick who's giving you buzz and saying, hey, Eric, we'd love to be a part of this this year? Because that's another interesting piece to this that I'm not sure that locally people are really that familiar with, but I understand it to be the case. The head coach in this situation, the Patriots and Bill Belichick, won't necessarily function as the head coach for the West team at the Shrine Bowl. Yeah. It'll be somebody else. So how does that hierarchy, play out?
It actually works out well for a couple of reasons. One, it takes kind of the stress off the head coach like Bill Belichick after just coaching the entire season. B, it allows Bill to kind of roam a little bit, which you guys know better than I do. He likes to do that quite a bit already as it is in practice. And he can kind of roam to offense, defense, and kind of chime in a little bit. And certainly all of our players will appreciate that. But lastly, and most importantly, it gives other members on his staff, the Falcon staff as well too, the chance to kind of be a head coach for a week. So I've not learned directly who the head coach for the Patriots will be in a week of practice, but that person's going to get invaluable experience. So are the coordinators calling plays maybe for the first time, right? If you get a job that's not quite a coordinator. So it gives people on their staff a chance to kind of show the rest of the NFL they can handle that job for future hirings. And that happens quite a bit at these all-star games. One of the goals is to develop talent, not only on the player side, but also on the coaching side too. So Belichick will get a chance to enjoy Las Vegas, evaluate players, help his coaches, see how his coaches interact, but also give these players a chance to learn from somebody else besides just him.
That'll be one of the great opportunities for those of us who cover the Patriots at the Shrine Bowl. And I'm not even sure the coaching staff will be fully set then, but at least we will get an opportunity to see how the operation runs and who's where and where's Gerard Mayo and how involved is he and what does it look like for him as somebody who's been in the news quite a bit lately in terms of getting maybe a bigger role this coming season. So all that stuff will be a lot of fun for us to track. I think it'll also be interesting for people to find out, Eric, just how much time the coaches get to spend with these players. So could you break that down for us, just in terms of not only the practices, but meetings and those sorts of things that go into a typical week for the Shrine Bowl? How much will the Patriots coaching staff be able to get their hands on these players that they're coaching?
Yeah, a lot. They'll meet these players on Thursday, January 26th, and that evening while all these players arrive, and they'll kind of first learn who these players are. And I think one advantage these coaching staffs have maybe over other NFL teams, and it's not much, right? Every NFL team will be at practice. They'll see these guys. They'll meet with these players, interviews. I think the Patriots can see these guys both in the meeting rooms and see who's locked in, who's engaged, maybe prepped a little bit before they got there, right? Who really wants to kind of learn and develop, and who wants to just be at an all-star game. But then also see these guys away from football, right? Sometimes you'll learn about people when they're not doing the thing you're asking them to do, right? So see these guys in the meal room, see these guys between practices, so you kind of naturally become the leader. And the Patriots and Falcons will get a close look at those kind of players as well too. And one thing the Patriots, I think, do a great job of is not only matching the talent to what they need, but also the personality to their locker room. And I think you have the great opportunity at the Shrine Bowl to see, hey, this guy talent-wise fits our offense or fits our defense, but he also fits as a person to what our locker room may need or be lacking, or maybe fits in best with as well too. So they'll get a good pulse, not just who these guys are as people, as talents, as they can embrace the football side of things, but also the personality side too. It's a huge experience, and they'll get multiple hours of practice, multiple hours of film time, meeting time. So they'll be with these players 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day for 7 days until game day to kind of get to know who these guys really are.
It's really amazing, just how significant an experience like that could be, because this time of year leading up to the draft, it's, quick interviews at the combine sometimes. And yeah, maybe you'll get to spend an hour or so with a player that you're considering taking. And maybe you'll get to bring a guy in for a day to your facility. But this extended period of time with these guys, I think for the Patriots, and just knowing how Bill Belichick operates, will be hugely, hugely valuable. And I know, having spoken to a few people in the building, the part of it, the football side of it, that's not even necessarily on the practice field. We tell you one thing in a meeting on Friday, when you come back on Saturday and we're meeting, what does it look like? What do you remember? What can you tell me about what I told you a day or 2 or 3 ago? I think that would be something that Bill Belichick and his staff would find really, really valuable too. And so it's how many practices, Eric? And tell me too about, I know usually there are rules or guidelines in place in terms of what the coaches are coaching, right? They're not going to try to install Bill Belichick's defense in a week's time. So how does that work in terms of that relationship?
Yeah, there'll be 4 practices: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Saturday the 28th, Tuesday, January 31st. We'll be at a mix of UNLV's facility, which is gorgeous and new and has a lot of space for us. And then we'll also be at the Raiders headquarters, which Bill Belichick, now famously, in my opinion at least, called the Taj Mahal of practice facilities earlier this offseason. So we'll be at both those facilities for practice. And to your point, yes, the layout for practice, the rules of which offense, defense have to follow is pretty set in stone. There's no 4 or 5 wide receivers, right? You got to have a tight end on the field at all times and a running back. There's no stunts or blitzes, right? It's much more like, hey, if you're on the line of scrimmage, you got to go. If you're not, you have to drop back too. So pretty simplistic. We won't get a chance to see these guys do a lot of complex things in practice or game day, but we will see these guys move, how they can learn a defense. And there is some complexities on the offensive side when it comes to run blocking and kind of zone schemes, as well as the receiver and route combinations. But also on defense, hey, where's your responsibility here, right? We can still have a couple of question marks that players can answer. Hey, it's nickel coverage, and which safety, the safety roll down? Does the linebacker go out? Do we have a corner do this? So you can still learn a lot about these players without having a super complex defense. And again, these players are here for an all-star experience, so I want them to enjoy their week and not be overwhelmed by a lot of stuff, but also show the Patriots, the Falcons, and every team they can handle being an NFL player for a week.
Now, people who listen to our podcast, Eric, they love finding out about some of these players that the Patriots might potentially be interested in moving forward, especially in an area, and you're living in this area as well. It's not necessarily the most hotly contested in terms of, if you were trying to rank the most passionate college football fan bases, let's just put it that way to just try to be kind. It's not going to be way up the list. So tell me, as somebody who knows these players extremely well and how they're broken down now, with the Patriots coaching this West team, I guess, especially, who are some of your favorites, and who are some that you think will generate the most buzz during this week?
Yeah, you're definitely hitting at somebody. Zay Flowers of Boston College, who I think has a good chance to be not only a first round pick, but an early first round pick because he's kind of this perfect mix of Deshaun Jackson being a guy that can catch vertically, finish catches in traffic despite being a somewhat small receiver, but also going to have that electric speed and downfield ability. And I think he's a guy that I think every team would love to coach. Both teams definitely wanted to coach before practice. I think every NFL team would love to have Coach Zay because of the person that he is as well as the talent. I think he's a guy that really show NFL teams during the week of practice that not only see a capable, dynamic slot receiver, outside receiver, but he can be a number one option in an offense. I think it's what Jay showed the whole week of practice, and so the Patriots will appreciate that. And also from Boston College, Jaden Woodbay will be playing some linebacker and safety. He played safety in college, but has kind of a linebacker build. I think teams want to see him in both those spots. So those two guys jump out for sure. And then if I can say one more, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the quarterback for UCLA. He's from Las Vegas, so he'll be a very, very large Thompson-Robinson contingency at the game and at practice. But he's a dynamic quarterback. He started 5 years. And I kind of make the comparison. The last time the Shrine Bowl had a 4.5-year starting quarterback who's played in a lot of games, a lot of big games in a major conference, he went 7th round. Now he's starting for the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs, right? And I'm not saying Dorian and Brock are the same player, but I think a lot of similarities in terms of Dorian being experienced and also having a lot of room to still improve in his velocity and the way he plays. So the Patriots get a chance to coach a really dynamic and intriguing quarterback all week long too.
Well, we know, just even last year's draft that the Patriots are certainly in on these Shrine Bowl guys. They were loving the talent that was there last year. I imagine the same will be the case again this year, especially as they get to know these guys a little bit better. I did want to ask you about two positions specifically, Eric, that are, positions of need for the Patriots coming into this offseason. Are there any offensive linemen? This is, the sexy chatter that gets all the college football fans and the draft fans going. But I think this is something that Patriots fans will start to get more and more into as we get closer to the draft. Any linemen that you think will impress or turn heads that week at the Shrine Bowl? Because I think at tackle for sure, but also even on the interior, I think they're looking for some depth in there. Maybe, somebody for the future at the center position for David Andrews, who's probably closer to the end than the beginning. So any linemen that you really like in this year's group?
Yeah, I like all these players equally. I want to make that point first and foremost. They're all my guys. But I think a couple guys that may fit New England. Connor Galvin, right? He's from University of Baylor. Last year, the Patriots had success from Baylor in the NFL draft. And Galvin's a guy that's played a lot of left tackle in his college career. A really safe, reliable, powerful offensive tackle. He can pass block, run block at a very high level. And he's a plug-and-play NFL contributor, if not an NFL starter. The Patriots love those kind of early playing rookies on the offensive line. Dalton Wagner, another offensive tackle from Arkansas, played left and right tackle in college. He's big, long, can definitely do both. I think he's got a long NFL future that fits New England. And then his teammate at Arkansas, Ricky Stromberg, a center who started 40 games in his college career. He's been around for a long, long time, incredibly powerful, incredibly tough, incredibly nasty. And again, he's a guy that maybe doesn't look the sexiest at the NFL combine, but he's going to start 10 years in the NFL at center. He's a guy that could be a plug-and-play starter for the Patriots right away, too.
Well, those last two names are names that we should remember for sure because they're coming from the SEC. And if there's some versatility there and a lot of experience there, you can know that they'll be on the Patriots' radar. How about corners? Jack Jones last year surprised a lot of people in terms of how well he played. I don't think he surprised you, Eric. I think you were really high on Jack Jones from the jump. I know that. But how about this year? Is there a Jack Jones in this year's group at the Shrine Bowl?
Jack's pretty special, and right, Jack fell later in the draft than he should have because there were some questions about his past that, I'll be blunt, I don't think they should have been that big of questions. You get a chance to talk to Jack and know who they were. So the Patriots certainly got a steal there in Jack a year ago. He was one of the best 3 or 4 corners in last year's draft comfortably, and he proved it all year long. So I'm not sure about finding other Jack Jones, but a couple guys here in the defensive backfield that I think are really, really intriguing for the Patriots. One, Miles Brooks of Louisiana Tech. A dynamic athlete. He'll be a high 4'3", really long, athletic, physical corner. He'll be really intriguing. Starling Thomas of University of Alabama, Birmingham, a versatile corner / safety, really physical as well, too. And then Cam Brown of Ohio State came into the season with a lot of high expectations from NFL scouts. Didn't have his kind of year I think he thought he had, but at one point, this guy looked like a first-round talent at Ohio State, a school known for churning out corners. He's the best corner in Ohio State a year ago, and he'll be a guy that teams are really excited to see. He can go from first round to a guy they kind of forgot about to back up to an early round player during Shrine Bowl week.
I love it. Another handful of names that we here at the Next Path podcast can dive into moving forward that our fans can check out as well. And I'm sure everybody ourselves included, will be paying close attention to once the Shrine Bowl rolls around. So Eric Galko, thank you so much for being with us, teaching us a little bit more about the Shrine Bowl. It's going to be a lot of fun that week. And I'm sure you're going to be a very, very busy man, but hopefully it'll be a fun week for you too.
Looking forward to it. Appreciate it, guys.
Great stuff there from Eric. And again, I can tell you this Patriots staff is really looking forward to getting out there. Does it mean more work for them? It might, but it also means more intel on these players, because not only are you going to get to watch them up close and watch them practice multiple times. So it's not a one-day showcase. It's what can you do day after day after day. And when we talk about something in a meeting, can you remember it? Can you bring it out to the practice field? Can you take it to the game field? And if we're just talking it in meetings, what do you remember from our conversation, not only yesterday, but 2 days ago? Those are the types of things that coaches love to find out about. And so the Patriots had plenty of Shrine Bowl prospects end up on their team from last year's draft. Wouldn't stun me if you saw several more from this game and from these few days of practice end up in New England come next season. So worth noting all of those names that Eric mentioned and worth paying attention to. We'll have Shrine Bowl coverage. We will not be in Las Vegas for the Shrine Bowl, but we'll have plenty of Shrine Bowl coverage because they make the film available to media. So we'll be able to dissect that. We'll get a really good look at who's performing well, especially at positions of need, and we'll be able to relay that back to you. Wanted to mention before we go today, we want to hear from you. We really, really want to, we always want to hear from you. Don't get me wrong, but we want to hear from you moving forward as we get closer and closer to the draft. We know if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably interested in the draft. So who do you want to hear about? What would you like to hear in terms of topics for Next Pats? Those are the types of things that you can let us know, whether it's in the comments on YouTube, whether it's on our comments page on Apple Podcasts, however you can get at us. Tweet me at Phil A. Perry. It could be that easy. Let us know what you're interested in hearing about this offseason as we get closer and closer to draft weekend, and we will do our best to make sure that we are satisfying all of your needs. We also wanted to mention that we're going to be out at the Super Bowl. Patriots aren't there. Doesn't matter. We will be, just like we were last year. Hopefully we'll be getting all kinds of interesting interviews. We'll be there all week, Monday through Friday, in the days leading up to the Super Bowl. So we will probably have multiple Next Pats episodes for you that week. So make sure you keep an eye out for those. Until then, we'll keep up with our weekly schedule of pods. So thanks for listening to this episode of Next Pats. Make sure you keep an eye out for our next Next Pats episode next week. We'll talk to you then.